everybody. This is Mike Riker. Welcome to Top of the Hops, episode 4. And joining me today, I am so excited because I've been following this man for a couple of years now, and I am so happy that he's joining me on my channel finally. He is the host and creator of a great channel, Elvis Nation, on YouTube. If you're an Elvis fan, you have to go to this channel. He does so much with Elvis. It's so great. Some great followers of that channel. And I actually maybe more of a fan with some of his stuff that he does. And I'd like to welcome him now. His name is Brent Spencer. Brent, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. Follow me for the last couple of years. There's got to be a better person to follow out there, Mike.
No, no. Like I said, the way you break down Elvis music, man, it's been so great. And I remember the first video I ever saw of you, and I was hooked immediately, is when you did Edge of Reality for the first time, when you first did it. And your reaction to that video, it was like, oh my God, guys, I gotta watch more of this guy. Because the way you broke down that song and the way you react to that song, more people do, like, If I Can Dream and Can't Help Falling in Love. And when you did Edge of Reality, I'm like, oh my God, he's really diving in. So
Well,
I really enjoyed it.
yeah, and it's funny because I think there's different facets to the Elvis kingdom.
Right.
And I call a lot of the people, and it's not a put down or anything, but I call them the malt shop crowd. They
Mm.
want the golden oldies and all that, and they get turned off when I go into those other things. But a lot of times it's those other deep dive cuts that are way more interesting to me.
Oh,
And not that they're better, I just think we've been so institutionalized with a lot of the standards that, yes, I've had this meal 20 million times. I love it, but I
right.
want to taste something I don't taste all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny. Like, do you feel like that with other artists though? Because I don't. Because like when I talk to, like, say, Springsteen fans or Beatles fans, they like the hits as well. They'll dive into a couple of the deeper cuts, but not so much like with Elvis fans. I think it's rare with Elvis.
Yeah, and I think there really are different tiers to the Elvis fan base
Hmm.
because there are some people that have probably listened to Elvis for as many years as your age and mine combined.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's possible, but I mean, but
I'm older than you,
but
Brent. So
but essentially though, you know what I mean.
yeah.
And yet they really we can mention 5 songs that they've never heard of Elvis's.
Yeah.
And that's what I call the malt shop crowd.
Mm.
They're more into their kind of, but yet I think we're a crazy bunch, and I think that it's a great place to be in. And I love what you're doing with your show. I just
Thank you.
really had some good wrestling flashbacks with the with what you were talking about on the very first one that you rolled out. And I just think this is a great concept, and I'm really want to wish you so much the best in
Oh,
what you're going
thank
to be
you.
doing here, because it's a really cool idea, but it's not gimmicky.
No, no, I just, like I said, I'm taking things that I like and love and just talking about it, and that's basically it. And just having some friends on and just having a good time with it. And I'm honored to have you on. I really am. I guess maybe you've discussed this in previous before we get to our beers and drinks or whatever in our top five. How did you start with the Elvis? Like, what made you go into reacting to Elvis at first?
Well, it was interesting because long story short, I suffered some physical issues that pretty much derailed my professional working life.
Mm.
And I have to be the type that has something to do to occupy my time. Some of us just have to be productive. And so you try to find in any way you can. And my therapist at the time suggested I really try to get in touch with, I had a journalistic background as well. And I thought, well, what's one way I could put my words into something? And I said, I really love talking about music. And a lot of people are doing reaction. But the problem is I'm older. So I can't really go gaga over Tears for Fears, head over heels. I've heard it 10 million times growing up. I heard, everything Motley Crue. I've heard everything Nirvana. I can't sit there
Right.
and go, ooh, smells like Teen Spirit. What is this? Well, I've been through all that.
Right.
So I tried to say, I'm going to tackle stuff I've never been exposed to. So a lot of it was new music. I was trying to do Taylor Swift and a lot of other things that I haven't heard yet. Some
Hmm.
of it I loved and some of it I could do without. And then I said, you know what? I loved Elvis as a kid, but I was a malt shop Elvis guy as a kid. See the malt shop there.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
And I said, okay, well, let me try to react to Elvis because but I've reacted to all, I've heard all these songs. I've heard Don't Be Cruel. I've heard all of the songs. And someone suggested an American trilogy. I said, okay, I'll give it a spin. I don't know if I'm going to like it because this is kind of like in his 70s. And under the curse of what we've all been taught, the 70s was a downward spiral of lack of artistic
Yeah.
output, dead on the toilet kind of stuff. And I go, okay, you know what? Fine, we'll do this. And it was the Aloha version.
Mm.
And it was close to a religious experience, Mike, as we can get, man. I'm sitting there like going like crazy in my head, thinking it turned me on in a way it couldn't, like intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. And I said, I got to do another one. I got it. And then pretty soon, I had my other stuff on the channel, and then there was the Elvis stuff, and I sequestered it to have it one day be all Elvis all Sunday. And of course, it was going to have to evolve from there because the deep dive was getting just as more interesting as I was going along. So then it became I switched off the channel. I split the baby Solomon style, and then it's Elvis Nation, and I split up the two channels, which in a weird way was suicide because I could have
Mm.
just kept on my normal channel and just kept the hits coming in with people and
Right.
subscribers. I had to rebuild it for ground, but I really wanted Elvis to have his totally own sphere with it. And let's call it what it is. A lot of people that wanted to see me do home free reactions really weren't interested in the Elvis reactions, vice versa.
Right.
It was
Right.
just time. And I'm telling you what, for that was 4 years almost that I did trilogy.
Wow.
And a lot of people think, okay, are you just kind of fanatic over Elvis right now? And this is kind of thing. Well, first of all, it's almost been 4 years. And I'm actually getting more started than I've ever been. I haven't even felt like I revved that engine, brother. And so I just am so excited to see where else we can go with all of this and stuff. And I think because I did all this, I'm excited for you because I know that feeling of starting a channel. There is
Yeah.
a fun thing. It's a building time. And I think 90% of it is the good headspace that you try to get in while you're doing it. If you're going into it trying to say, well, I want this to be the biggest thing out there, 10 million hits and all that, it's not going to go like that right away. But if
No.
it comes from the heart, it will grow in its own way.
Yeah. I'm not here to make, like you said, to get so many hits. I'm just here to have fun, do something I love, do something I like,
Yeah.
and just combine, the two things I love and like most. So that's and this is my fourth episode. And for people who do know me, they know how much I love Elvis. I've been an Elvis fan. You mentioned American Trilogy. That's how it started for me. My mom was an Elvis fan, and she put on Aloha from Hawaii live in 1973. I was only two, but she said that in my carriage I was bouncing up and down, and I just never, and it just by the age of three she bought me the album for my birthday. So, and
So
it just
that went
calmed
into your
me.
cellular memory at that age. That
I don't remember any of that. The only thing I do remember is playing that album nonstop. Once I got 3 and 4, I do remember that. I do remember that was my first ever album I had of Elvis was Aloha from Hawaii, and it was funny whenever I would be be bad or anything. The first thing they would do is threaten me. We're gonna take that Elvis album away from you, and so that would be like, no, 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 no. So that to me was started, and I. It's funny. I have never wavered, Brent. Sometimes you get into these modes where I'm gonna take a few months off and not listen. No, I've never done that. I'm always listening. I'm always on top of stuff. I'm always watching things. And with people like you and Leon and Michelle, you guys have made my fandom even, which I never thought would happen, like just even grow leaps and bounds. It's been
well,
amazing.
you've seen Rick's channel too, haven't you?
Yes,
Elvis
Rick's too
Agency.
as well.
He
Yes,
is he just,
yes.
and I think he brings such an awesome thing to the table. Not only because he's a friend of mine, but not only that. Well, he became a friend of mine after he put in the channel, and then he told me that he watched my channel, and I was one of the few people that inspired him take a go at it of his own, but he actually was there at Elvis concerts in the past. So I think he brings a real interesting perspective.
Yeah, he
And
does.
interesting what you said there, because you know what? I have other musical fan geek camps that I belong to, and I can kind of take breaks from those, like you said. And I thought that was very interesting because I'm very much into Rush, and yet
Love
I could take a
Rush.
break from Getty and the gang, and yet I can come back like I haven't missed a beat. I've done that with the Beatles, the Stones, certain
Mhm.
jazz groups I really like, and singers, and yet with Elvis, I've never really taken a time off from that since I've
Yeah,
gotten into the deep dive.
yeah. I'm like going through discographies of a lot of artists because I do like to listen to other music, but
Mhm.
after I finish like an album, I have to go right to Elvis just to listen to a couple songs. So just to get my Elvis fix for the day. And I told you before, like right now, I'm in the midst of doing all of his concerts in chronological order that are out there. And I'm in 1971, and it's amazing the stuff that I don't even like. I've never heard before, and it's like
Yeah.
it's opening my eyes and my ears to like to all these great things, and it's like just rediscovering Elvis again. It's been great.
Especially when you have an audience recording that
Yeah,
is better, like you like this version of a song better than some of the soundboard recording officially released by RCA came out, and you're like, wow, this is the best, this is much better version of Sweet Caroline than
right.
anything that's been released officially. And I
Yes.
love those little moments because you feel like you're an explorer, and there's still some stuff out there that someone possesses, and so the story isn't totally done yet, and that's exciting to me
Yeah,
because you
it
know
is.
someone, we're going to hear about someone who died and they opened up their vault or something, and the kids will put out whatever, and so there are some tapes still out there.
Yeah, and that's what's exciting because I like I was telling before, I have friends who are Springsteen fans and all this, and when I tell them, oh, I listen to alternate takes and I listen to the studio, and like, what's alternate takes? What's that? What is that? They don't have that for a lot of these artists, so we're lucky in that sense that we have all this, alternate takes and unreleased studio masters and all this audience recordings. There's not a lot of that out there for a lot of these artists,
Oh,
and
not even the Beatles have as much
no, no, right.
available. And I think they were really on the right side of history by allowing some of that to be recorded as much as they have allowed it. Because I think a lot of that, people used to say the devil's in the details. I feel the angel is in the details because
Yeah.
sometimes you pick up on those moments, Mike. You just come alive in a way that you
Hmm.
didn't think you could, and yet in a way that you'll never even tap into that from the studio recording, because sometimes when you have that great little polish that comes along with the master, sometimes you improve on it, and I think sometimes you destroy some of the great inner workings of it. And that's why, like, when I think Leon puts together those first take to the
Oh,
master thing, that's geek heaven to me, man. That
yes.
is. And I think, what I noticed, Mike, is at the beginning a lot of people on my channel didn't care for that kind, because Leon always had his channel, but like what we did on my channel, we did a first where you took kind of a guy who was from the learning phase of Elvis as far as the deep dive, and paired him up with the master, which was Leon. And I focus on, and at the beginning, a lot of people going, why are you playing these things? Who wants to listen to take 5, take 6? But it eventually grew. Yeah. And a lot of those people that weren't into that
Yeah,
are now into that, going, okay, now I'm getting it because I'm hearing things I didn't hear before.
right.
And it's exciting because let's face it, when we get our age, there's not a lot to look forward to in life. I mean, in some ways, getting older, it's not the funnest thing in the world.
I get it.
But
Yeah,
isn't it fun to have some things that still keep you like the kid in the candy store kind of thing? That
absolutely.
feeling. Oh man.
Yeah, and it's like, not to dive too deep into it, but like just an example, Help Me Make It Through the Night. So I always liked that song, didn't love it, always liked it. But when you and Leon, and I forget which one, I think it was you that I first heard it, was the undubbed one, undubbed version of Help Me Make It Through the Night. And I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Like it wasn't like you said, overblown. It wasn't, it was like really Elvis at his raw best. And when I heard it, Help Me Make It Through the Night, it was like almost listening to a different song than
Yeah.
the master.
Yeah. I've even felt that with some of the recording sessions for some of the ones that we call standards, where I'm
Hmm.
like, ooh, this take 4. Okay, this is a little interesting change up. I think they kind of stripped down its kind of whimsical aspect to make
Yeah.
it a final master. But so there's so much to unpack there, Mike. And so I gotta admit though, I love it because when someone who was watching one of my shows is now doing one of their shows, even though it's not in the same genre or kingdom, it's just exciting because this is the first time it's happened where someone has said, "Hey, I've been watching a channel. I'm starting one of my own." And when you asked me to be on here, I was so honored. I thought it was great because for those of you out there who don't know, you substituted for me or did a guest host spot on the Elvis Music Show, and you not only were so great and personable at the mic and on camera, but you also really curated one hell of a set list. So, you know, you always have a permanent invitation to come on whenever you want to spin some tunes.
I appreciate that, and that moment was actually what inspired me. I always had this idea in my head, but that's what like I really have to get on the ball here and start and kind of start this video and start this channel. So so happy to have you here. So it's funny when I asked you to do this show, you said, "Well, Mike, you know, I want to do it, but I'm not a drinker." So which is fine.
Well,
So
can I
I
clarify something, Mike?
yes,
When I say I'm not a drinker, it's not because I'm trying to be an angel and I'm a snob and I'm looking down on anybody drink. It's no, it's because I have such an addictive personality, man.
I
I
get it.
would like it way too damn much. And it's like I think early on I chose food over alcohol. I
Right.
said, but so I know I would get so carried away with it. But I actually, believe it or not, I used to be an assistant manager at a gourmet wine shop. So I had to know all my beers. I remember Australia, we had Foster's Lager, we had
Yes.
Sapporo for Japanese beer, and I had to pair them up for dinner recommendations with people.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I do have a head full of knowledge about beer.
Yeah, which is good because and I said to you, I was like, who cares, man? Let's just have some fun. And I even told you, you know, if you wanted to, maybe we could do this for next time. Let's get some root beer. You know, as long as it has beer in the title, let's just have some fun with it. So so you don't I'm sure you have something a little special. What do we got today?
Today,
Budweiser
okay,
Zero. I've
this
never
is what we
seen that.
got. Budweiser Zero. First of all, I didn't even know this was on the market.
I didn't either.
The Zero market, and I think it's because at first, like back in the day when I used to work at the gourmet shop, we basically only had Amstel. I think
Yeah.
that was a non-alcoholic, and O'Doul's.
O'Doul's,
Okay,
yes.
and what I saw in the store, because I got to be in the spirit of it, I'm not going to drink root beer. I'm going to do you one better.
Okay.
Non-alcoholic. I'm meeting you as far as I can because I actually
Love
like the
it.
taste of it. I think there's a lot to be. And so they had Budweiser, they had Heineken Zero, they had Corona Zero. I didn't know that that market has exploded in the way it has.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I actually went to the beer store today because believe it or not, I was going to join you in having a non-alcoholic beer until I found something that you know kind of goes with today's topic. But you're right. I saw, like you said, I saw Heineken for the first time zero. I even saw like even Blue Moon Zero, which I love Blue Moon. So like I'm looking at that stuff. I'm like, wow, I should try this one day because, like you said, the only thing I think of a non-alcoholic beer was O'Doul's. And I've had O'Doul's, not the biggest fan in the world, but I would love to try some of the name brands of their non-alcoholic beers.
I know, especially that the zero kind of thing, whether it's soda or beer, they're a lot better than they were years ago at trying to
Yes,
nail the taste. And I'm sure they'll never 100% get it. But if you have to suffer for an alternative, it's a lot easier to suffer with one than it used to be
right,
back
right.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
So
So,
what do you
but
got? What do you got today?
so I it's funny. My wife actually brought this to my attention today when at the beer store. So this is the first time for me. It's an IPA. And the only reason she saw it is because of the name and with today's topic. It's called Little Sister. So I had to
So
get that.
awesome.
Yeah, so I had to get that because I was looking for like an Elvis
Is
type
that St.
beer.
Pauli girl's cousin or something? I mean,
It's funny, yeah. It says Gray Sail Brewing of Rhode Island. So this is actually done in Rhode Island.
yeah, I've
So
never seen it. So I wonder if is it a regional
yeah,
brand
it's a
or
regional
okay.
beer. It's in Westerly, Rhode Island. So it says here it's not easy growing up when your older sister is the captain's daughter. All you ever hear is praise for her. Well, now it's the sister's turn. This session IPA is loaded with mosaic and citra hops, full of flavor and aroma. The little sister is out to make a name for herself. So So I thought, my wife's like,
Oh,
oh, little sister. So with today's topic being Elvis, I had to get this with
oh,
the
that
saying
is
little
so
sister.
apropos, man.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the first time for me. I've never had this before. So this could be either a good or a bad one. We'll see. So I'm gonna take a little sip
All
now,
right, I'm gonna pop open mine.
and that's very, very nice.
This Budweiser Zero, it actually has a very subdued taste. I
Okay.
think it's very inviting for someone who doesn't normally drink. Now, when I was younger, when I would have a beer every now and then, before I kind of went teetotaler, I would enjoy, on the domestic end, I would enjoy like a Miller Genuine Draft kind of thing.
Right.
I was kind of more into that. Now, are you a Pilsner or lager person, or?
IPA is probably my favorite. I do like Pilsner. I'm not a dark beer fan. I'm not crazy about stouts or porters. I'll try them because I like to try a little bit of everything.
So you're not
But
a Guinness man or anything like
no, I'm
that?
not much of a Guinness guy. IPAs, I've really gotten into sours lately. Um, the problem with the sours though, you have one of them, and it does fill you up, so you got to be careful with them.
Yeah.
But you give me like a good IPA or a good lager, I could drink like three or four of them. I don't drink to get buzzed or drunk. I just like the taste of it and trying different craft beers.
Well,
And I will
actually,
say,
most people really are good at like the whole craftsmanship of it, and the they love just the to talk about the finer aspects of it. Usually, don't do that to do it to get the buzz. It's
right,
usually like an admiration thing. Like the best wine drinkers in the world don't usually get drunk on it.
exactly, exactly. And this one, I'll be very surprised, very good. It's very hoppy. It's got a little bit of like lemon zest almost.
Mhm.
So it's a great find by my wife. So, cheers to you, Brent. Thank you so
To
much
you
for
too.
joining. And so, with our talk of Elvis, obviously our topic is Elvis, but specifically today we are doing top five Elvis soundtracks. And some people are going to say, soundtracks, he didn't. Let me tell you something. There are so many great songs in his soundtracks. I know there's some, not great ones. I love them all. I don't care. Even though McDonald, I don't care. It's still Elvis. But there is some great stuff out there. And we're going to get into it right now. There's some great songs that, listen, songs like Let Yourself Go and all that. That's all from soundtracks. Love Me Tender is from a soundtrack. A lot of people don't even realize that. So there's some great stuff out there. Teddy Bear,
A lot of
obviously.
people don't know that Return to Sender was a
Right,
soundtrack
exactly.
hit. Yeah,
Exactly. So there's some great tunes out there, but this is actually not just songs, these are the actual soundtracks.
soundtracks.
So what
Yeah.
we're gonna do here is we're gonna start with you, Brent, with your number five, and then we'll come to me and we'll go back and forth. So Brent, what's your number five
Okay.
Elvis
Well, I'm going
soundtrack?
to tell you what, Mike, what we do with our list here. What I love about it is Elvis people who are truly into the deep dive don't sit there and try to do the safe answers because they really kind of want to be in the majority of accepted. You'd ever notice that? So
Right,
we're
yes,
going to
yes.
all run into areas for whatever reason. And for number five, and I'm going to tell you why. For number five, I came in with Frankie and Johnny
Oh, okay.
because I love it when any band or singer does something that kind of goes off of the predictable route and set sail into unfamiliar waters, and to
Hmm.
kind of do a mix of like ragtime jazzy kind of thing with that, mixed in with it could have been a musical. I love when someone does something bold and audacious like that. And I have a predilection toward jazz and a lot of swing and a lot of Dixieland kind of stuff. So I really thought that was such a unique thing. A lot of people would, well, in fact, Elvis wasn't even crazy about it. He had a temper tantrum once in the studio, pretty much
Yeah,
saying, "Why do I have to record this and expletive, expletive, expletive?" And I'm sorry, I love it. And it's one of those things that a lot of Elvis people, it's not their favorite soundtrack. It's not, probably
right.
doesn't make their top five, but I don't care. I just love it. I can't help it. And is it kind of kooky and cheesy in some ways? Of course it is. And that's guilty pleasure for me. So number five, Frankie and Johnny. How
I
about
love
you?
it. What would be your favorite track from Frankie and Johnny?
I would say Come Along. I just
Okay, yeah,
love that whole bounciness of that.
yeah. I like Frankie and Johnny too, Brent. It's one of those that I didn't appreciate till I got older. Um,
Mhm.
I actually liked it. I actually like watching the movie because it comes across as it should, as a broad. You're watching a Broadway show almost. So
Yes.
yeah. So that's why, and you're right. So right, on with that. In fact, it got Elvis out of his comfort zone a little bit, where and that you could see Elvis on Broadway because he had the chops for it,
I,
obviously.
I
So
think, yeah, and I think that's why because a lot of people want to pigeonhole someone, and when someone does something, even if it sometimes falls flat on its face, I liken it to like the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds or something. When
yes,
someone does something off genre
right, yeah.
and they actually do it pretty well, and you're right, he could have taken all of that to Broadway and he would have thrived.
Yeah, absolutely. Good number five. I love it. My number five, also, I'm not saying to get out of his comfort zone, but it's definitely a different sound. And that is my number five is Fun in Acapulco. I love the Latin sound of that movie, the soundtrack. His voice is really full. Obviously, you got a big top 10 hit out of that movie with Bossa Nova Baby. My personal favorite song of that movie is Margarita, which is very underrated. I love the way he does that song. That him belting out at the end of that song is great. The way he sings to Ursula Andress is a great scene in that movie. But even like some of the lesser known ones, even like Vino Dinero more. I mean Guadalajara. I mean he's singing in Spanish. I mean, the guy can do everything.
Even like
Uh,
you take El Toro and Bullfighter Was a Lady,
yeah, that's fine.
and
And but even the title track, another one where it grew on me. The Fun Acapulco is a great title track. It's a great way to start the movie. And fun's in the title. You know what, Brent? That's what made that soundtrack makes me smile. It's a fun soundtrack, and that's my number five. I love Fun in Acapulco.
well, it is. No one ever sits there and says, "I'm depressed about nuclear war," and I have Fun in Acapulco playing in the background, and you
Yes.
can't help not to be kind of taken away from the doldrums of everything and lift it up. And not only that, but one thing that impressed me about that soundtrack is that with the soundtrack, a lot of times when people try to do a cultural crossover tune, there's a very strong invisible line that you want to cross over and do it with respect.
Hmm.
I'm not Italian, but if I started singing That's Amore, I can almost sound like I'm mocking Italian culture
Right.
if I don't sing it 100% correctly. And you can't really lay out what defines trans when one trespasses over that line. You just know it when you heard it. And I thought it was very respectful the way they took the material and did it with dignity.
Yeah, and like I said, you can tell he's totally into it. Even the video of him doing Bossa Nova Baby is a great version of Bossa Nova Baby on the film. But if you have not heard Margarita, if you're a casual Elvis fan, I implore you go listen to Margarita. It's a great tune.
Oh, definitely, definitely, definitely.
Okay, number four, Brent, what we got?
Number four, this is another one off the beaten path. Like we were talking about with Fun in Acapulco, we're trying to adopt the Elvis sound combined with the sounds of music that hails from the Middle East, harem scarum. None of them were hit. Not one song on there was a hit. Not one song on there was probably heard by even the casual Elvis fan, unless you were into the movie itself.
Mhm.
But I love the incorporation of kind of world sounds into it. Some of those, like for example, Golden Coins is one of my favorite songs off of there. Go East, Young Man. I just love a lot of the vibe on that. But the thing is, I can't really explain why it's like great. I don't even know if it is great. I just love it. And I think what's interesting about it, they did something very different that no other soundtrack did it. They kind of kept Elvis's voice clear, but a lot of the backing instrumentation almost has like a muffle sound. Like if you listen to So Far Yet So Close to, or So Close Yet So Far from Paradise, whatever. Getting tongue tied, but you can hear like the muffled sound with like with the drums and everything on it, and it just It's a very unique listening, but it's very melodic. Wisdom of the Ages. I mean, there's just a lot of great stuff on there.
Yeah, it's funny. I almost that was my number six. So I just missed the list. I actually think that soundtrack is very vastly underrated. You're
Oh,
so
I
right
do
that
too.
yeah. First of all, so close yet so far might be my top three. We do another one of these, by the way. Top five soundtrack songs. It's in my
Yeah.
top three. That's a beautiful song that he does. With so
Oh, and
close
the
yet
way
so
how it
far.
fade, the way how it like slowly starts up,
Yes.
because it really does. It feels like you're being whisked away. Like when you think of, all those like Middle Eastern kind of theme movies like The Sheik or something where you're going off to this exotic land or something like
Hmm.
that. It has that element in the songs, which I think it has it more in the soundtrack than in the movie itself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. To me, the soundtrack is better than the movie.
Oh, 20 times.
Yeah, and he does a great version of that. You gotta watch it with actually him doing that song. And you're right, even like some of the love songs like Kismet and Golden Coins, there's some beautiful, beautiful melody in in those songs. And even the two songs that weren't in the sound in the movie, like you mentioned, Wisdom of the Ages and even Animal Instinct, some great songs there. Got a good number
Animal
four.
Instinct is really a ballsy kind of
Yes,
dirty song. And like, and I'm not talking about as far as lewdness, I'm talking about is the way it gets into the grit of it.
absolutely. Yeah, great number four. My number four, again, we talk about Middle Eastern, we've talked about Latin. Now we get into a little bit of Eastern European with some of the songs that he does in there, and that's GI Blues.
Oh,
I absolutely love the soundtrack to GI Blues. I think the one of the best love songs out there. People talk about "Love Me Tender," rightfully so. "Can't Fall in Love," rightfully so. My favorite love song, especially in the '60s, for me, is "Pocket Full of Rainbows,"
oh
and
yeah.
and that song from GI Blues is just unbelievable. He has some great rockers in there. "Shopping Around's a really good tune. The title track's really good. I think Frankfurt Specials are great. His voice sounds great in that one.
Oh,
I
especially like when you think of like that style of like
Yes,
during like when you think of like when you think of music that GIs would listen to, like when you think of the 40s, there's a little bit in that of a throwback to like the 40s kind of GI sensation when he's like, whoa,
yes,
whoa. I mean, you could have almost pictured like the Andrews sisters or something singing back up
yes.
to that. So there was a little bit of all kinds of different styles thrown in. I would say like the only song I never understood, I didn't hate it or anything, but Blue Suede Shoes, I never understood remaking that.
Yeah,
Um, where they could have probably done another song. But like I said, that is such a small little gripe compared to how much fun there was in that whole soundtrack.
yeah, and another one of those underrated songs too, which I again another one I've gotten into lately is "Doing the Best I Can." Like that it was almost like he was still in the '50s with that kind of like doo-woppy kind of, like
Yeah.
that song "Woo." Like it was just unbelievable. I love that song. And again, you could tell he's having loads of fun with this soundtrack.
Well, especially
Um,
putting the accordion in it and like
yes,
in the way how he hits those notes. Like I think what you said in the like when the 50s, that's a very good point that you made because there's those like sudden climbs doing the best that I
yes, yeah,
can.
yeah.
And that's just so much fun. And you know what's one that I thought I would have hated when I first got into the deep dive, but I actually really love it. And I don't care how many people laugh at me, Wooden Heart. I just think it's
No,
fun. It just has such a fun energy about it. It's like the little kid in me loves that or
yes.
something.
Yeah, and it's a great scene too in the movie as well with him trying to impress Julie
He,
Proust with the
he
kids.
actually interacts with that pup. If you just turn the sound down and watch Elvis interact, he's
Yep,
very expressive.
absolutely. Yeah, great point with Wooden Heart. I also love "Tonight Is So Right for Love." He does an alternate version of that, which for the first time I noticed. I think like a year ago, there's video of the alternate version in the film, which I didn't realize. So there's actually video of him singing the alternate version to Juliet Prowse, which I didn't even know it was out there, and I saw it on YouTube about a year ago. I'm like, I never saw this before. So
That's
if
why
you
like a lot of people don't know that there's a lot of the soundtrack versions aren't always the same as the movie versions.
right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my number four. So all right, we're up to number three, man. What we got, Brent?
Up to number three, it's probably going to be everyone's number one out there, but it's number three for me. Blue Hawaii, there's a lot of sentimental attachment to this because it was the first Elvis movie I saw. There, to me, there was just so much fun in it, and like I said, it's personal. My parents met in Hawaii, so
Oh
there's
wow,
such a
okay.
connection I have with the soundtrack. My mom introduced the soundtrack to me, but even as an adult with my own taste in putting aside all the memories and all the attachments, there are just, first of all, like Blue Hawaii, a lot of people don't even know that's a remake of like a 40s, early 40s song. So it
Hmm.
kind of has those old-timey kind of things. And I think what it did is it took that, because during World War II, Hawaii was like such this idyllic location. So for Elvis to choose the title track Blue Hawaii, you can even sense in the way he sings it, like in Blue Hawaii, da 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 da.
Yes.
It just has that getaway, that excursion kind of thing, like, but the funny thing is, even though it has that, it kicked off really the Elvis exotic location kind of formula, and or the love story formula, the all
Tra-
around formula
yeah,
that
the
would be
travel logs.
replicated so many
Yeah,
times, the travel log.
yeah.
um there were still like whimsical moments on that soundtrack that you take the like eloquence of like Hawaiian wedding song, Blue Hawaii, um, Hawaiian sunset, or but yet you could have stuff like Rockahula, which is just so crazy and silly, and Beach Boy Blues, which I think is
Yeah.
just to add a bluesy aspect to that Hawaiian kind of theme vibe was really crazy if you think about it.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yet it totally worked. I mean, heck, even things like Ito Eats, and not only that, but they broke convention a little bit with Moonlight Swim, having some of the ladies join in.
Yes, yeah, which I thought was really nice the way they did that. I love you number three so much so, Brent, that it's my number three as well. But yeah, yeah, Blue Hawaii is my number
I wouldn't
three.
have said as much. I would have left half of it for
No,
you,
no,
though.
please, no,
I'm
no,
sure you. I'm
please.
sure you have stuff to add.
Yeah, listen, I love everything about the soundtrack. I mean, it's got 14 songs on the soundtrack. So you mentioned Ito Eats, a lot of people were like, oh God, really, Ito Eats? But if you watch him doing that song, he is as silly as the song is, and it's silly, he's into it. Like
Well,
he is dancing, he's having so much fun with it.
listen to, if you think of Hawaiian music, and I have a very limited view into it. It's not been part of my culture, and I've heard some of it over the years from different artists and stuff. A lot of people just focus so much on the silliness in the craziness of that song as kind of like a silly throw in. But if you do listen to Elvis's vocals, he goes into a different, like, eat to eat some,
Yeah,
he's really getting into it, and he actually does it really well. Whether it's designed to be silly or not, it is actually executed with perfection.
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because like, he tried to recreate that movie, with Paradise Hawaiian Style. It didn't work, unfortunately. He loved Hawaii so much. Listen, he look at the songs that came out of this movie that he did live. Can't Falling in Love. He ended almost every concert with that song. He did Hawaiian Wedding Song how many times in the 70s? He did Blue Hawaii, during the Aloha from Hawaii when he did all those tracks, off, without the audience, but he did Blue
Mhm.
Hawaii and No More. So obviously he had a lot of love for this movie, a lot of love for the music in this movie, as do I. I just love the Hawaii. I always liked Hawaiian music. I liked Dean Ho when I was a kid. So Don Ho when I was a kid. So this kind of like burst that into me. But I think everything about this soundtrack is beautiful. I love the ukuleles and the guitars and all these
Well,
songs.
look at even the percussion. Like, think of
Yes,
like Slice and Sand or some of those other songs.
absolutely. Yeah, and
Um,
and for me, Brent, I like the movie version of "Can't Falling in Love" a little better than the title track than the original recording
yeah,
because it's a little raw. I love the way he just sings it. It's so beautiful. Uh,
I think they could have just taken that and put that on the record, and it would
yes,
have
me
been
too.
fine. I think,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So we agree on number three with Blue Hawaii. Now we're getting down to it. What we got number two?
Well, you've already kind of laid the groundwork for this one. Fun
Oh,
in
oh
Acapulco.
wow, nice.
Margarita, that's one of my favorites too. I also Love the little Mexican flavor of things like Bullfighter Was a Lady, El Toro. And I got a lot of flack because I really like El Toro. They go, yeah, but it's about a bull or whatever. I go, forget, he could be singing about going to the grocery store. Listen to the
Right.
music.
Yes.
He could be singing about shaving at 6 a.m.
Yes.
And did you ever see when Eddie Murphy was it Delirious? Or no, I or
No, you're right.
they,
Delirious.
yeah, when he sits there and does that Elvis bit, he's like lemonade.
Lemonade.
Like, yeah. And he was so right about that
No, he
because
is.
Elvis could have done that. I don't care if it's about a bull, it doesn't matter. Listen to a lot of the mariachi sound, the trumpets. And first of all, I love a lot of that Mexican kind of sound to that music. And I don't know, it's really weird because I think there are some people that they don't like to go outside of their cultural boundaries when it comes to music. If they're a New Jersey person, they don't leave Springsteen or Frankie Valli behind, it doesn't go beyond that. And
Right.
I like sounds from around the world. I love to have a new experience. And so I love it. I love that. I love mariachi music. I love a lot of
Hmm.
I could appreciate the fine instrumentation involved in all these different genres. And Elvis is able to transcend them. And that's not an easy task. Like if you and I were just BSing and we put together a mariachi sound and we started singing La Mama or something, it wouldn't come across as authentic as Elvis doing it.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a listen. I was my number five. I mean, we were splitting hairs here. Yeah, you're right. I mean, his voice in that soundtrack too, Grant, is just. I feel like it's funny because like he went from the '50s to GI Blues, and you definitely noticed a change. But even from like GI Blues and Blue Hawaii to here, there's a little bit of change too as well. There's like more maturity in his voice.
Yeah, even like when you think of like Fun in Acapulco, you mentioned earlier, the melody is very endearing to it.
Hmm.
So, and I think like they say first impressions are important. So you take like Blue Hawaii and that you have to go right with the very first thing they're going to hear in that movie.
Right.
And when you first hear oh God, my mind's going blank, Mike. What's that instrument that does it? It's right before Fun Acapulco. Acapulco,
Yeah. Yes.
and it just it sets the tone so perfectly. And
Right.
even like from the foreigner point of view, I think I'm gonna like it here, and stuff like that. It works
Yeah.
good. Even what's funny, if you listen to the song Mexico itself, it has such a fun and animated sound. If you think about this, stretch your mind a little bit. If they made a Disney cartoon, full length feature in the 70s or 80s or even 90s that took place in Mexico, Mexico sounded like it could have been on that soundtrack or something.
Yes.
It
Right.
it just has that Mexico, da, da, da.
Hmm.
It just has such a joyous thing about it. And as colorful as like the Mexican flag is, I think that soundtrack is just as colorful. Very colorful, enjoyable, and a favorite.
Yeah, I think it's one of those soundtracks where, I was reading some reviews on the soundtrack from back when it first came out. It's not very favorable. I think as time goes by, that soundtrack gets more and more love, especially from Elvis fans like us. As we hear that soundtrack, that soundtrack to me is beautiful. I love that soundtrack.
Oh yeah, yeah.
My number two is again a different feel, a different vibe. It's my number one movie of all time from him, but it's my number two soundtrack, and that's King Creole. I just listen. I'm biased. I lived in Louisiana for 20 years, so
Oh,
I
did you?
love. Yeah, yeah. So I
So
I
did you
love.
start out on the East Coast or did you just
I
end
was
up there?
born in New York. My
Okay.
father moved when I was two to Louisiana in Baton Rouge, and I lived there for over 20 years. So I still consider myself
So were
some
the
some
alligators so mean or
yes, the alligators are very mean. So I am biased when it comes to this soundtrack because I love the jazz part of it. I thought it was brilliant the way they took his rock and roll at that time and incorporated with the jazz and the Dixieland and made his rockers on that song are some of the best songs I've ever heard. Between Trouble and King Creole and Dixieland rock and New Orleans, it's amazing some of the stuff he got. I love, and this was another song that I didn't appreciate till I got older. I love it might be my favorite song from the album, and that's Crawfish. Now, you take a song about crawfish, you're thinking, oh, this is gonna be stupid. I'm telling you, listen to that song, especially the duet part of it. when he does it with I forget her name. I think it's Kitty White, I believe.
Kenny White. Yep.
Yeah. So I absolutely love that song. My wife absolutely loves that song now. She's like, I would never think of a song about a crawfish could be so great. I'm like, that's what Elvis does. He takes sometimes mediocre material and turns it into just unbelievable material. So I love King Creole. There's a reason that it's not number one. I'll get to that a little bit later. But to me, like I said, and to me, Trouble, that scene, and maybe along with Mean Woman Blues, but to me, Trouble is my favorite scene from a movie where Walter Matthau wants him to
Oh, and
sing
the
up.
way how it showed
Oh,
them back and forth between Elvis and
yes,
Matthau, because you had these two men on a hierarchy trying to, Elvis was threatening Matthau's hierarchy, and what Carolyn Jones or wait, is that her name? I'm trying to
yeah,
my name.
Carolyn, yep, Carolyn
Yep,
Jones,
yep.
you got
And
it.
she's
Yep.
sitting there, and I get when it's funny because I could tell you all the names perfectly, but when I'm on the spot, like my mind goes deer in
Me
headlights
too,
sometimes.
Brent.
Like, oh, the young guy, the singing, Elvis. That's right. That's
Yes.
his name. And but
um,
you're right. It just there you could sense the tension visually.
yes, yeah, exactly. And it's just that's my
Oh,
might be my favorite singing
oh,
scene in every movie, and any movie that he's done was is that one. Me, Women Blues from Loving You is a close second. But to me, the
yeah.
way he looks at Walter Matthau when he's singing that song, I like you said, it gets me goosebumps even now.
That totally. It's almost like that whole sequence personifies everything Elvis was in the 50s.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Sexy, dangerous, and a new force to be reckoned with that would even make the most powerful men feel vulnerable in his
Yeah,
presence.
yeah, and people would say, and listen, some of it's true that it was the last great movie he did, and I get that. It's my favorite movie, but I think there's some other great ones even in the '60s. But to me, that was the quintessential Elvis movie for me. And if anybody wants to say, what movie should I watch? I turn them on to that first one, that King Creole first.
Well, I think you're right because I think what we saw building up in the 50s was kind of them actually trying to build up a future Brando or something, someone who could
Or
be in.
James Dean,
First
yeah,
of all, yeah, that first of all, the material in that movie, like even if you look at Jailhouse Rock, he was actually in a lot of ways an unsympathetic character in a lot of
right,
ways.
absolutely,
And
yes, good
even
point.
in this, like when he just stood and watched his father get beaten up and stuff like that, and he wrestled with his demons and all that, there was a complexity in that beautiful era that I think they just derailed it when he got back from the army and said,
Yeah,
let's go for box office gold. Let's go for more crossover appeal because it was a little, it wasn't the family friendly love fest
no,
in the
and well,
50s that it could have been that
yeah,
was in
and
the 60s.
right. And what I love about the movie too, Brent, is that he has a supporting cast that's you have some great actors in that. I mean, like you said, Walter Matthau, Carolyn Jones,
Vic
Dean Jagger,
Morrow.
Vic Morrow, right? Experienced, well-known actors that can help Elvis along with the movie. And I thought, like I said, he never has a supporting cast like that ever again, unfortunately. But that movie to me is great, and the soundtrack's awesome as well. So that's my number two. All right, Brent, we're here. We got it. Number one, what we have?
Well, let's just continue talking because
Yeah.
it's King Creole. Like,
I hope I didn't take too much shine away from it.
no, no, oh man, I'm telling you what, I really think, first of all, when you think of like the New Orleans kind of sound,
Mhm.
innovative, dirty, sexy, jazzy, kind of mixing the best of heaven and hell together in one kind of vibe. You
Yeah,
have the Catholic glory angels with the dark voodoo demons, and that's what makes for that. So you combine Elvis with New Orleans. That is a fiery combo
yes.
that whomever sat in a room and dreamed that up. And I mean, I know it was based on the book, originally. I don't know in the book how much of a role that, but the whole New Orleans music, combining it with Elvis, I think that was the first point where we're going to do something totally innovative here with the music. I mean, don't get me wrong, he was innovative with the music early on, but this is the first time where I think we're going to take a step and do the Elvis genre switch. Well, actually, I got to take 5 steps back. He already did that with his early tunes, but he never did it with this kind of style before.
No, no, not at all. Yeah,
And when you like Trouble, you got to go back to that because, first of all, I think it's self evident of what you said about that, because it is such the iconic opening for just years later, 10 years later in 68 with the special.
Yeah,
When
right.
you think of that fade in with Trouble, that's
And
iconic. And look how that's sustained, because that was still considered badass in 68 when he did that.
yeah, and to me that version is more well known than the King Creole version.
Mm-hmm.
This is the '68 version because more people are more accustomed to that opening, like you said, of the comeback special more than the scene with Walter Matthau.
And you know what? You mentioned the song about crawfish, and I think, and I only think I think like this because I have a journalistic background, so I wrote like a few novels a few years ago, but I never really kept them on the shelves or anything. But one thing I learned during the fiction writing process is you say one thing what something is ostensibly about, but you could be speaking about something else altogether. So I look at crawfish like that. If you look at the lyrics, it's talking about one thing, but if you listen to her sound and the way
Mm,
Elvis and Kate play off each other, it's really about the culture, trying to set up New Orleans
yes,
culture as a character in and of itself. Um, the the modern man with the woman from the voice of the past, of the pain of New Orleans, the a lot of, it's weird because it has such a rich history of beauty and total suffering,
yes, yeah, and it's
and
a
yet
great open.
combine all, and you feel that in the pain. Like, listen to her going crawfish. It's not really about crawfish. I think she's singing like and I'm trying not to, I don't, maybe I'm full of it. Okay. I feel like the echoes of like her people that helps define and partly weaves the tapestry of what New Orleans culture was, because you really do get a feel of setting in that song.
No, to me, you're 100% right, Brent. Because remember, before that, you got the guys singing gumbo and turtles and berries, and so which leads into crawfish. So you're right. It's all about. It's not like you said. It's not about crawfish. It's about the culture of
Yeah.
New Orleans, the culture of Louisiana, and
If
just
you didn't know anything about it within 5 minutes, you darn well sure
yeah,
did. Yeah.
absolutely. And to me, I don't think you can get the real. And I like the version on the soundtrack, but to me, you have to get the version with Kitty White. To me, that version, the duet version, to me overtakes the version just by Elvis.
Well, it just is such an atmospheric
Yes,
song, and I think it's a lot more complex than what it looks like at face value, like when you
right.
say crawfish, because it really does. But I don't think I think crawfish is just an element of what's in their life, but I think they were really trying to establish a sense of place to where the outsider, even in Europe, could understand what exactly is going on here.
Yeah, no, great point. And we even talk about this too. It's like, the only top 10 song from that album is "Hard Headed Woman," which is barely played in the movie. And
Yeah.
it's such a great dizzying tune. Like it's all over the place, but in such a great way. But it's
Oh,
crazy
it's
that song's not even in the movie.
yeah, and you're exactly right. And I think too, there are just he's done ballads and he's done slow songs before, but I think there felt to be more of an emotional maturity going on in the way he sang some of these. I could be reading into it, like As Long as I Have You. There
Mhm.
was something that showed so much growth just in the 3 years that he's been since his recordings at Sun, how he's evolving and how his voice is evolving at that point. And I think there was just such a blessed thing about that, even down to, when you think of Dixieland Rock,
Mhm.
and just some beautiful, beautiful stuff that's put together, a very full. And I think if you notice, you and I are pretty much been consistent on these full beefy soundtracks, and
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest regret near the end of the soundtrack era, because even on some of those soundtracks you'd have two or three great cuts, but it would be a very anemic 22 minutes or something, and they'd have to throw in
Right.
some back catalog stuff to fill it up. And
Uh,
never understood that, why they just didn't record more songs. I don't know if it was a scheduling thing or what, but
yeah, I know it's a shame. All right, so my number one, again, it's another themed kind of soundtrack, and that to me is Viva Las Vegas. To me, it's the ultimate musical, especially when it comes to Elvis. I know people talk about the travelogues and all that, but Viva Las Vegas to me is one of the best musicals of all time. I love the chemistry between Elvis and Anne Margaret. I love all the music in there. To me, it's like a mixed bag of stuff. You have a great rocker and What I Say. You have a great pop song in Viva Las Vegas. You have some great, and I mean great, ballads in I Need Somebody to Lean On and
Today,
Today,
tomorrow, and
Tomorrow,
forever.
and Forever.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean I Need Somebody to Lean On. It's got that great Vegas lounge type theme to it. I love the duets that he has with Anne Margaret, whether it be a silly song like Lady Loves Me Too. I know it's not in the movie, but You're the Boss is one of the great tracks out there. And
Did you hear the first take to the master of that?
oh, it's like he's so nervous in the studio, right?
Yes.
So like to me, it's and what I gets lost in this, and this what makes me a little bit angry. I love to do there's so many top fives in my head, but top five mistakes. How is this not a soundtrack album?
I
It
don't. It's
boggles my
almost like.
mind.
And by the way, that was my number six. So
Okay.
I think it was because I went up between Frankie. It's actually, I think, better than Frankie and Johnny, but I think because I just love the music era of Frankie and
No,
Johnny,
I get it.
I kind of edge that out. But no, when you think about it, it's really evolved. Today, tomorrow, and forever. Why wasn't that even a top 10 hit while we're going at it?
Right.
I have heard a lot lesser ballads become number one
Yeah.
throughout the years.
Right. And Viva
I
Las Vegas
don't.
is well known, and yet it was never a top 10 hit. And I think there's just poor marketing on on that side because, like I said, how is Viva Las Vegas? If that soundtrack, that would have been another number one album for Elvis, and yet they just put it on a simple EP. You get all these songs later on the Camden labels, for the first time in
Yeah,
1970.
why didn't they? I mean, they could have put like they had Do the Vega and
Right. I mean, even
mm.
you could put, yeah, you could do the Vega, you could do, all those songs. You can even put some of Anne Margaret's solo stuff on there
First of
too
all,
as
you could
well.
have put Today, Tomorrow, and Forever on one side, and then the version with Anne Margaret on the other.
Absolutely,
They filled
absolutely.
it up with sillier stuff on other albums before,
Yeah,
so why not?
right. It is. It isn't like it's like a 5, 6 song soundtrack, right? It's got like I think
Yeah,
it's got like 10, 12, 13 songs on it. If you, especially if you include Anne Margaret stuff.
oh, I know. Yeah. Especially like, and you know what? You talk about Frank and Johnny, that's an early version. A lot of people like talk about the Frank and Johnny and like Signs of the Zodiac, also on
Right,
The
right.
Trouble with Girls. It started like, I think, with that Broadway-ish kind of thing with
Hmm.
Anne Margaret on stage.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And just, even like when you think of the diversity of the soundtrack, like the Yellow Rose of Texas, like,
right, right.
um,
That's what I like about the soundtrack, Brent. You mentioned it, that was the word I was looking for was diversity. It's like it's got a little bit of everything, and that's why I love the soundtrack so much. And I was so happy when finally, like how many years later, Follow That Dream finally put out a national soundtrack to Viva Las Vegas, and it was like, why couldn't they do this back in 1964?
I think that was the first era where you saw, and it's no reflection on Elvis, it's about the people who handled everything,
Hmm.
of that streak of just stupid
Yep,
backward ass decisions that eluded us. I mean,
I know.
that's in the Hall of Fame, as such as like the lame 70s covers of just live shots of Elvis instead of doing something inventive and making an album cover, and designing something really awesome. Instead, we're just going to slap on, and because those albums, a lot of people just assume they were live albums because you saw a picture of Elvis in a jumpsuit on the cover.
Right, right.
These careless, stupid decisions, that there were no obvious. I just cannot find the common sense of it. I cannot
No.
find, no, let's not do it this way. In fact, I think they were robbing themselves of
Yeah.
opportunity because the LP would have sold more than an EP.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And listen, as an Elvis fan, I loved the Camden albums as a kid, but like when you think about it, it's criminal that the first time you hear "Come On Everybody" and "Today, Tomorrow, and Forever" and "I Need Somebody to Lean On," you don't hear it for the first time on an LP for another 6, 7 years. It's crazy.
And not, don't forget, you didn't have streaming back then. You didn't even have home video
No.
back then. So if you went and saw it once at the movie, you've forgotten it, and it just went into the ether for
Yeah.
all you knew.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there you go. There's our top five. Great top five. What's your top five? Please comment, like, subscribe down below. I will put your link down below. So
Oh,
please, if
thanks.
you're an Elvis fan, you have to subscribe to Brent's channel. He put some great stuff out there. Over the weekend, he had a tremendous 24-hour video with the Circle G Foundation. Please look into that. It's so great. Some of the stuff that he does. Brent, thank you so much. I hope we could do this again. I had
Hey,
so much
I'm
fun.
just an email or an instant message away, my friend.
I appreciate it, Brent. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us on Top of the Hops.